Back up and going this weekend for the New York Red Bulls out in what will probably be a hot and humid Texas with Austin FC. Lincoln, appreciate you coming on, giving us a couple of minutes. Red Bull had the week off last week. I know Austin was among those that played and got what I would think is a pretty big win, right? Going into this game and probably a much needed win.
Yeah, Matt, that marked the start of the second half of the season for Austin, match 18 of the year. And yeah, looking back, Austin's glad it happened. You go to Colorado, you get a 2-0 victory, a mile above sea level. And all of a sudden you have a new bit of optimism going into the second half that things are starting to click for you. I want to point out for New York fans that 12 teams from the Eastern Conference in these 5 years for Austin FC have come to Q2 Stadium. Only one of them has ever left with the full 3 points. And so Austin's going to make sure that the Red Bulls don't make a habit of that this weekend with your second visit.
Listen, I just wanted on record. You brought that up. I didn't bring that up. I was going to maybe steer clear of that.
Preemptive strike.
The numbers for Austin, the one that jumps off the table, and I'm sure you spend a good amount of time talking about it in interviews like this, or even during the course of the broadcast, has been goals have been really tough to come by all during the course of the year.
Yeah, I imagine in the offseason we'll petition to have the goal to be a few inches wider in each direction, and all of a sudden Austin might see a few more go in. But it has just been a game of inches that has kept Austin from finding larger goal totals along the way. And in part, that has masked how good their defense has been this year. Take away one matchup against Red Bull alum Brian White up in Vancouver, and Austin's giving up less than a goal per contest. And that should have you right there towards the top of the conference any given year. But it's just, you bring in several new offensive pieces who have all proven they can score at top levels around the globe, but still trying to figure out how they all fit together. And you have reason for optimism that this second half of the season that should come together.
When you look and you talk about defensively, this team has been pretty good, minus that one game against Vancouver. The one thing that, and again, this is not a matchup that takes place all the time, but Red Bull and Austin did play a couple of years ago. I was remarkably surprised when I was going through my sheet this week how many different players there are on the roster short of 2 years ago when these teams played than today. And I know that comes with the coaching change and the evolution of one of the newer teams in Major League Soccer, but transition has been a word that I'm sure Austin has become pretty familiar with.
Yeah, when you think of the Austin team that went all the way to the Western Conference Final, there's not a lot left. Obviously, you've got Brad Stuver in goal, who I will point out as a caveat was not in goal that day against the Red Bulls here in Austin. But Brad, along with a handful of others, John Gallagher, Jean Kalmanich, Julio Cascante, mainly guys who are in that back row, along with guys who are very young early on, Danny Pereira and Owen Wolf. But beyond that, a lot of new pieces have been added these past few transfer windows. Rodolfo Borrell, of course, came in as the sporting director a little over a couple of years ago, and he has had to work within the MLS rules of how you build a roster, and it's not easy to get out of some contracts that may not have been favorable. But at this point, he is pretty close to having a roster that has really been, to his credit, very meticulous with and able to put together in a responsible manner. Last year, Austin played with a short roster. It was an incomplete roster the entire year, and it's one of those where, well, we can't just go out and get a Band-Aid because that's going to cost you long-term if you sign someone just for the here and now. So Austin, every time they make an addition, you know it's for the long-term. That includes the club record signings at the 3 different DP spots dating back to last summer and the 2 in the offseason as well. But yeah, for you and I who probably enjoyed just a few tweaks to our notes from the last time the two teams got together, this was almost a start from scratch when we were beginning our prep this week.
Lincoln, talk maybe a little bit about playing style. I mean, listen, everyone wants to score goals, but sometimes teams are set up to win a lot of games 1-0, 2-1. Don't give up a ton, don't score a ton. That's kind of how Austin, at least on paper, seems like they want to play. But is that more of a style that coaching staff has kind of put together, or is that more of, to your point, there's been a lot of near misses?
Well, of course, Nico Estevez, second ever head coach now for Austin FC, comes in this year, and his approach seems to be matchup to matchup, and he doesn't want to get so deep into just formation and style and some of the other things we tend to talk about. he tries to think at a different level, and it really is from one matchup to the next. Who do I have available? What best? How do they best fit into it all? Last year, we would see Austin at home play one way and then go on the road and be extremely conservative with that short bench and just try to hold out for a 0-0 draw. Maybe they only scored multiple goals on the road once last year. We just saw that the other night against Colorado. This is, at least in terms of entertainment value, Austin, whether they're at home or on the road, tend to play with a similar amount of aggression, looking for the full 3 points. They are not just trying to hope that you have a strong couple of months at the end of the year to make up for whatever you missed out on early on. So in terms of style, I can't help you much there other than they will be responsible in the back. With that said, your offense still often begins with what that back line can do. A lot of talent back there. I think right now, the missing piece is just something that'll connect that ball, constantly providing service up front.
Lincoln, finish with this one, and it's kind of where I started, and we can end with it. Clearly, as we move into the summer months, I'm sure Austin is hoping teams come in and literally melt during the course of a game. I don't think it's going to be awful on Saturday in Austin, but clearly it's going to be warm, and I would think that's something that the team and the franchise tries to use to their advantage. Like, hey, you're coming to Austin, it's going to be hot. You're going to have to kind of grind and work within the confines of what could be, upwards in the 90s.
Yeah, I grew up here in Austin, and I can tell you right now, it doesn't matter if you've lived here for 4 decades or if you've lived here for 4 months. There's no such thing as getting used to it, as it just seems to get more and more humid around this time of year. We've seen Austin's players who are from over in Europe come over, and it doesn't matter if they've had a full season. They're still going to have the same issues of making sure they're hydrating and doing everything during the week. So as much as it'll slap you in the face when you get off the plane, when you land in Austin, I think both of the coaching regimes we've had here, especially when they're out training during this heat all week long, they'll tell you there's no such thing as getting used to it. It's just learning how to best basically manage your players throughout the week in a responsible manner so that they are ready. And I imagine it's a lot like altitude as well. But it's just about how you manage those minutes and what you do during the week leading up to it all. So my recommendation to you, I don't recall what you did a couple years ago, is keep those windows closed for that booth right until after the national anthem, and then go ahead and let all the air condition that had been built up during the week out of that booth of yours. But you and Steve, who I'm sure will be fresh off of some concert here in Austin before making his way over to the stadium, wear something nice and breathable if you want to be presentable at the end of the night.
You are very aware of the New York Red Bull radio crew. Lincoln, appreciate you coming on, giving me a couple minutes. Look forward to seeing you at the end of this week and into the weekend in person.
Glad to have you back, and hope to have you back for the U.S. Open Cup final before the end of the year.